This is LOA Recon with Good Vibe Coach Jeanette Ma, where we explore the ins and outs of conscious creation to manifest our favorite dreams come true. Let's have some fun together. Welcome and thank you for joining me for another episode. The other day I was watching another near-death experience interview on YouTube. I am still loving those. They kind of feel like love letters from home to me. Like someone's reminding us what it's really like so we don't take ourselves too seriously here. Anyway, after I finished watching it, YouTube recommended a video that I had trouble ignoring. I mean, it was obviously a ridiculous video. There was no reason to watch it. It was for sure just clickbait. A total waste of my time because it was a guy saying he saw Bigfoot on his way to work. Whatever. I am not falling for that. That's a crazy claim to make. But you know what? People will do anything for online clicks. So I tried to click away, except I couldn't, not with peace in my heart. So I just clicked on it so I could confirm this was not legit and I could just get on with my day. And I'm just going to add here that I feel like a giant hypocrite right now because I think I saw Bigfoot while sitting on my front porch one day. So, for all I know, Bigfoot is my neighbor. I don't know why I'm making fun of a guy who said he saw him on his way to work. Anyway, I'm also going to add that I thought I saw Bigfoot right after I moved up here. It was like my second week, and I was just sitting on the front porch, taking in the beauty of the trees and the mountain on the other side of the road, and I saw something walk between a gap in the trees that could not be explained as a deer or a moose or a person or a bear or anything else that would make sense as to how I understood the world to be. I literally did not know what to make of it except that sure looks like Bigfoot. Oh, I know that sounds crazy. And it was super brief. It's not like I got like a good 5 minutes to study it and get a picture. But the thing is, this thing never came out on the other side of the trees where it was walking. And I was like, oh, that tripped me out. In fact, it tripped me out enough that I mentioned it on a date that I had with a new local guy who told me he also has seen Bigfoot with his daughter. They both saw it, and that our area is actually known for this. Okay, so I'm just saying Bigfoot might be my neighbor. Okay, anyway, this guy's talking about his Bigfoot story, and I was maybe a minute or two into listening to his story, and I knew I believed him. I was a believer. I went from scoffing to totally believing this ridiculous story that he's telling. I mean, it should have been unbelievable for a wide variety of reasons, but I bought it. And the reason I'm talking to you about this is because this is our wheelhouse as conscious creators, learning to believe the unbelievable, learning to embrace stories that aren't true yet. And while we might not be manifesting Bigfoot sightings, although how fun would that be, there are plenty of other things we do want that sometimes feel just as unbelievable. So I thought it would be worth covering a handful of ways we can train ourselves into believing what we don't yet know to be true. Just a quick reminder, as a conscious creator, you know that we live into the stories that we tell, so it's important for us to tell the stories of what we want, rather than repeating what already is, or what we don't want, or what we don't want, or what everyone else is telling. A savvy manifestor knows to tell the story of what we want. And sometimes we do that in short story form, like affirmations or mantras. And some of us have the experience that those words just bounce right off. They cannot take hold. They cannot get in us because they're so obviously untrue that we can't wrap our arms around them. This can be tricky stuff because deviating from reality is what's called for as a conscious creator, but it isn't what we were trained to do in our lives. In fact, as kids, we were trained out of that largely. We didn't maintain our pretend skills. No one valued our daydreaming skills. So if we're still daydreaming, a lot of times it's more likely to be nightmares or worries instead of our dreams and desires. That's not helping us as conscious creators, where our alignment work calls for us to be able to deviate from reality in order to line up with what we want. When we keep looking at what is, we can't create anything other than that. So when we turn our attention to what isn't yet that we want, but we find that too unbelievable to embrace, that's a problem too. Like being able to talk about financial ease and abundance while we're broke, or being able to reflect on how great our love life is while we're sitting home alone, or rampaging some appreciation for our amazing healthy bodies while we're still feeling illness or pain. That's not easy. That's why it's worth developing good storytelling skills as part of our manifesting practice, because it serves us as creators to be able to speak what we want, even when it's not true or believable yet. So here are 7 tips on how to tell the unbelievable story so you can believe it. How to make the unbelievable more believable. Any one of these can help you speak it so you believe it, even when what you want seems more unbelievable than spotting Bigfoot on your way to work. I'm totally going to link to that video. In fact, speaking of Florida man seeing Bigfoot, did I mention he's from Florida, of course? Look, he offers us a clue, actually, our first one. The reason I believed his unbelievable story was because he believed it. I mean, it sure seemed to me that he was speaking what he believed to be truth. So it was easier for me to believe it because he did. That actually happens a lot. I do it in coaching all the time when my client wants to believe in their dream, but it's a stretch for them until someone else, especially someone with authority or credibility, tells them that, yes, indeed, they can have this. This is possible. When we know someone else believes in it too, that validation can be so helpful. It's also really unhelpful when we're talking to someone who doesn't believe. It's hard to go against the grain of what everyone else believes. So choosing our audience wisely is our first tip. I'm talking about getting connected with someone else who believes it too. Maybe someone else who has done it themselves, or someone who knows that you are personally capable. Oh, like when I went to the bloggers conference and the coaching convention and the membership site panel. Oh my word, it was so good for my believing ability to be in the midst of others who were up to the same thing because these people were all doing it. Here I was walking around with other bloggers like I was one of them. I didn't talk to a whole bunch of people because I'm a giant introvert, but just being in their midst was so good for me. And the positive expectation that came from attending that membership site panel, oh my gosh, it was contagious. I loved it. All of a sudden, the thing that had seemed far-fetched now felt obvious and doable. Like I was thinking, why isn't everyone doing this? This is amazing. So that's our first tip. Choose your audience wisely. And that might mean have no audience at all. Keep your story to yourself because you might not know anyone in your world who can be trusted to believe in it with you. But you know who will believe? AI or a guided meditation or hypnosis. Oh my gosh, Paul McKenna can talk you into anything. And he has some available online on sleeping, weight loss, money, confidence. He's got a wide variety of them, all sorts of great topics. That guy talked me into sleeping when nothing else worked. Anyway, I'm just saying, you can get creative with your resources. If you don't have a friend who will help you believe in it, you can use AI. Ooh, but speaking of friends, I got to give a shout out to my ex-boyfriend who, at the time when I was longing to quit my corporate job and be a manifesting coach, that guy believed in it long before I did. And he kept telling me that I could, I should, you can do it. Start now. You'll love it. You'll be amazing. He was such an amazing champion for me. It was a big game changer for him to lead the way into that dream for me. So you might not have a friend, but there are other resources right under your nose that you can use. Oh, you know what my friend Chris Wallace uses? Oh, she's the author of Ready to Win. She uses Alexa. She programmed it to respond when she says, "Can you believe it?" Alexa responds with, "Chris, isn't this amazing? It's happening. This could be really cool. You are so lucky. This is awesome." I know it's a programmed computer, but it is still so cool when someone else buys into our dream story with us. Even if it's AI, even if it's Alexa, don't knock it until you try it. Speaking of AI, another side note, if you don't have a helpful boyfriend or Alexa available to you, anyone with an internet connection can prompt AI to talk about it with you. That's what we've been doing in our latest installment of AI for Conscious Creators at GVU. Claude and I created a prompt to train your platform to be the most helpful, supportive, and encouraging scripting partner you ever had. That's a fun way to get into the story, and actually a good lead into my next tip, which is repetition. We need to repeat this story. Telling it once can open a nice door for it to manifest. And if you don't tell a contrary story, then once is enough. But most of us are well aware of our contrary stories and they get repeated through our attention to them. You know, the stories of, I'm out of money, or no one is interested in me on the apps, or I can't drop this weight, or whatever. We need to deliberately repeat our preferred story just to counter the unhelpful ones that we repeat. So the answer to the question, how many times do I have to tell my story, was, it depends. How many times are you telling your unwanted story? Because you're going to want to tell your preferred one more often than that. You want to hear an extreme example of this? Kamal Ravikant, I think that was his name, the author of Love Yourself Like Your Life Depends on It. I should have looked it up. He immersed himself in his new story in every waking moment. I might be remembering this wrong, but I'm pretty sure he repeated, I love myself, I love myself, I love myself, over and over and over, nonstop through his waking hours for I think it was a couple days in a row. It might have been longer than that. That was a lot of repetition, but it was also a guy who didn't want to live anymore. So he needed an extreme answer to the routine he'd been engaging. I repeated the story of I'm a brilliant coach in high demand every time I heard my gremlins whispering the opposite to me. Every time I heard them say, uh-oh, this isn't going to work. You're going to have to get a job. That was my cue to repeat my preferred story. No, I would say, no, that's not what I'm creating. What I'm creating is I'm a brilliant coach in high demand. Yeah, and that meant that my story was getting repeated frequently throughout those early days. I read a fun quote this morning. Let me see if I can find this. This is from Shane Parrish's newsletter. He was quoting some NFL player. Okay, here it is. Star NFL player Max Crosby, who was talking about, the difference between the microscope and the telescope. He was talking about the microscope is the day-to-day, but he said the telescope is the future, 2 to 3 years from now. What's your ultimate goal? What do you see yourself becoming? And he said, you just peek at that from time to time. You think about it at night a little bit. You think about it in the morning. Think about it after a workout. Like, that's why I did that. That's why I pushed myself, because I'm getting to that. I really liked the way he was talking about just picking up his story now and again. He didn't word it exactly like that, but I liked the way he was talking about how he just spends a little time with his preferred story here and there, now and again, just picking it up every once in a while throughout the day. That's the second tip, repetition, because repetition breeds familiarity, and that's what we're doing. We're acclimating ourselves to the unbelievable. You basically just want to rehearse your good story more often than you rehearse your bad story. And if you didn't tell your unhelpful story ever again, you don't need to keep repeating your good one. So if you get tired of repeating it, just remember, don't tell the other one. You're home free. Okay, the third tip is don't reach too far from where you're at. We want to find the sweet spot where it's a stretch, but we can still wrap our arms around it. This is like when Abraham quotes Jerry about don't put the basket so far out that you can't hit it, but don't keep it so close that it's too easy. You want to find that sweet spot in the middle. Like instead of going from the money isn't flowing the way I want it to, if that was someone's current reality, to a story of I'm so rich I can't even spend it all. Some people can do that. Some people are really good at the 180. I am on some topics. Sometimes I can really rock that. But there are other times when it helps to do something a little softer, like I'm learning to get a handle on this, or I'm looking forward to things turning in my favor, or I have good reason to expect things can change for me. Others are doing it. Surely I can too. They're not any more special than I am. Something like that. Just find the sweet spot of how to tell it in a way that takes you further, but doesn't make you fall flat. Okay, our fourth tip is to tell it with emotion. You know what helps us embrace a story really well? When we're feeling it. Instead of just going through the motions of repeating the words, conjure the emotions that go with it. Those are our favorite stories anyway, right? The ones that make us feel something. In fact, Florida Man, he made me feel something, awe and wonder and a little bit spooked. Whether it's in the song we're listening to or the hero we're watching on the movie screen, when emotions are flowing, we're so much more into it. So be sure to include that element in your story. If it isn't already conjuring those feelings, you can speak to them as a way to help activate them. Like, it's such a relief now that, or I'm so happy to see that, or I've never felt so satisfied as when, da-da-da-da-da. In fact, Abraham has talked about how Esther sometimes just uses the words of emotions exclusively as a way to get herself into alignment. Like she'll just repeat ease and flow, ease and flow. She doesn't have to have any details. She doesn't have to say why or how. She just repeats those words in order to feel it. What I'm saying is, we don't need a lot of details to get to the good feelings. We can have absolutely no idea of how we got into this dream house or who hired us for our dream job or even what our dream job is, but just touching on how it feels to be there is the game. Okay, that brings me to our fifth tip, which is to play with the time element of it. When we play with the tense, past, present, or future, that can make a difference in our ability to buy in. And you really do have to experiment with it to see how it feels in order to know what's best for you. You might surprise yourself how much easier it is to embrace the story when you observe it from the rear view mirror, like it's already happened. Or sometimes that perspective is too jarring and the best approach is instead to talk about it as if it's going to happen in the near future, or even now. For example, if I'm trying to tell a story of a settled lawsuit or some sort of resolved conflict like a divorce or a breakup, it can work really well for me to just tell the story about how glad I am that that's handled. Done and dusted. Such a relief to have that behind me. But often, when I'm telling the story of my animal's thriving health while I'm sitting in the lobby of the ER vet, sometimes that's easier for me to do in the future tense. You really just have to play around with it and feel the difference, but it can make a difference. So I wanted to include that in our tip lineup in case you're not already experimenting with the time element of your stories. Okay, our 6th tip, find one true thing that anchors it. I know I said before that emotions are more important than details, but man, if you can get some details in there that work for you, that can really sell a story. Like Florida Man, he had some very specific details in his story that made it even more believable. The right elements just add a touch of what feels like truth to it. You know, in spycraft, when someone's creating their legend and they have these details, like in their pockets or their purse or in their desk, that says they are who they say they are? I'm watching that series on Netflix right now. I think it's called Legends. For example, if you say you're an importer, you would have shipping contacts. You would have an office warehouse. You would have drivers or whatever. So, like, if you're a person who is hot on the dating scene, your dancing shoes are probably not collecting dust in the back of the closet. Or if you're healed up from that surgery, maybe your running shoes are right by the back door. I don't know, I'm coming up with shoe examples. But when I was manifesting being a coach, I cannot tell you how powerful it was for me to have business cards made. It was a long time ago, but even then I never really used them because I did all my business virtually. But just having business cards that had my name on it with a logo and the title of Law of Attraction Coach. Oh my word, it was so powerful for launching me into my story. So if you can find one true thing, one detail that anchors you into your story, that can be helpful too. Okay, the last tip I wanted to share with you is to practice in low resistance states. The windows just before sleep and just after waking are some of the most useful real estate for conscious creators in our day for aligning through story work. That's because our analytical mind isn't operating in full force, so we're not as likely to hear arguments or come up with evidence that contradicts it, because that part of our brain's offline. So telling the story then, right when you wake up or right as you're drifting off to sleep, is a tried and true practice among conscious creators ever since Joseph Murphy wrote about the power of the subconscious mind. Well, probably before then, but yeah, that one had an impact on me. It's why Neville is always talking about practicing during the state akin to sleep. What we imprint on our subconscious mind in that drowsy threshold state, it goes in differently than it does in the middle of the day. Okay, and I just want to add one more thing. It's important to be patient with ourselves as we find our way into our new story. At first, it's probably going to feel unfamiliar, maybe even a little uncomfortable, but that's normal. While we're learning a new language, essentially, that's what we're doing here. The story needs time to take hold inside you, to become something that you can reach for naturally. So you might struggle to find the words or the feelings of it at first. Just be patient with yourself while you find your way. Because we live into the stories we tell, so it's worth taking however long it takes to get a hold of the one that takes you to dreams come true. Florida Man believed in his stories so fully that a total stranger on the internet, me, a skeptic even, bought it completely. That's what we're going for. When you believe your story, it shows in your energy, in your words, in the way that you carry yourself, and the universe, like any good audience, takes its cue from the storyteller. So pick your story, practice telling it, and watch it manifest. Thanks for listening, everyone, and happy manifesting.